The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Sunday, the 1st of June, 2025. So happy June to everybody. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, CEO and President of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommey. Well, Mary, let's start with this. I'm just going to run through a couple of these first, and then we'll talk about it. So CBS News, first of all, RFK Jr. says CDC will no longer recommend COVID vaccines for children and pregnant women. The article was concerned Bobby didn't listen to the advisory panel, the ACIP. They hadn't had a chance to vote on this, says CBS. Then Brenda Belletti in The Defender, CDC removes COVID shots for kids and healthy pregnant women from schedule of recommended shots. So the CDC will no longer recommend COVID-19 vaccines for these groups, from Bobby announcing that. And before we go on to the press freaking out, let's just talk about that for a second, because I definitely have concerns over this healthy word, because, there are people that, like the mothers of the dead babies we've been recently doing, that have never heard of Children's Health Defense or Daily Clout or Highwire or anything like that. And they trust their pediatrician still. So if they go to their pediatrician and say, look, my child has an ear infection, the doctor could potentially say, yes, we'll treat the ear infection, and actually let's give it a COVID shot because he's not a healthy child. That could happen, Mary. We know the pediatricians are always pushing these shots. So, and also, what's not a healthy child? Is it my Billy? Is he considered not healthy because he has a autism or whatever? So I am greatly concerned, and I do not understand the healthy children, healthy pregnant. Women who are pregnant with nausea that go to their doctor for help. Is that considered not a healthy pregnancy? It's very confusing and a little alarming.
It's ambiguous, Polly. I think the big picture is this is a step in the right direction. The big picture is that Bobby Kennedy, as secretary, has been saying consistently, as have the other key leaders at HHS, there's not adequate justification for COVID shots for children. They're at extremely low risk. But they're leaving open, likely, the idea that children can get the shots if they really want them or their doctor really wants to give it to them. Now, the reality is, Polly, most pediatricians have not been pushing for children to get the COVID shots. It's like 14% of kids who've actually gotten them. But you're absolutely right that this healthy, pregnant women and healthy children don't need them. It's very ambiguous who is healthy. And you're right that it runs the risk of giving the shots to people who are either sick or who are immunocompromised. And in my view, giving these shots to somebody who's already immunocompromised is extremely dangerous. So I think this is sort of an attempt of a compromise. I think what we have to recognize, Polly, is there are incredibly strong forces in national security, in the pharmaceutical industry, in the chemical industry, that want to keep this mRNA platform going and that want to keep some of the COVID shots going. So it was interesting in the first article you mentioned from CBS, Dr. Schaffner, a major spokesperson for vaccines, he's saying, well, we'd already come to this conclusion anyway. And this is what the ACIP committee of CDC was going to say in June anyway, that we're going to move towards targeted groups to get vaccines, not universal recommendations. So we may see more changes to this at the June ACIP meeting, which is the end of June. And I hear what you're saying, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. Let's recognize that this is only the second time ever that a CDC recommendation a major universal recommendation has been pulled back. And that first one was related to, I think it was Hib for intussusception risk. And this one, they're just saying, hey, it's not justified. COVID's basically over. So I believe that the uptake will go down. I believe that insurance and the vaccines for children will probably continue to cover these shots, but that uptake is going to go down, which we know is going to really be beneficial because there's so many unknown risks and the known risks of myocarditis, of multi-system inflammatory disorder, of all kinds of problems with these shots.
All right. Well, Elizabeth, when Americans raised concerns about RFK Jr.'s anti-vaccine views, he said he was not going to take away any vaccines from anybody. But now he's taking them away from millions of mamas and babies. Well, no, Elizabeth.
No.
He's just not recommending them, and you can still go get one if you want. The comments were funny, Mary.
The comments were very funny. The top one that I saw is she's dressed up like a NASCAR rider and has all these big pharma labels on it. And somebody else, Dr. Liam Schubel, a friend of CHD, said, the vaccine religious cult is losing ground. And the other one I loved is somebody just showed the data. It's a 99% survival rate for people if they get COVID. So I thought the comments were really fantastic.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, the COVID shots for the children and the pregnant women were emergency use authorization.
Correct.
So they were never approved.
It's never been approved. And that was another really great comment is it's never been approved. It's not a licensed vaccine for children. It's still emergency use authorization only. Exactly.
And what does emergency use authorization mean? Does it not mean that we don't know?
It means it's investigational. It means that it may be effective. They don't know if it's effective.
I don't know. Okay, well, back to the defender. Media and health officials lash out at RFK Jr. over new COVID vaccine recommendations. The CDC was likely to make this change anyway. Again, you can still get it. It's just not recommended. Lots of so-called doctors telling us how safe it is for pregnant women and children. I mean, that's just ridiculous. These doctors with these so-called high credentials saying this is extremely safe. It's not.
Well, Polly, these groups, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, let's be honest, they are bought off by pharma. They get millions of dollars every year from their pharma overlords, and they really put the interest of pharma over their patients. And it's horrifying, but it's real. The most important thing here that struck out to me was attorney Rick Jaffe has a case that we have funded on behalf of a pediatrician who would not give COVID shots to young children because, and then she lost her practice because all of her children were paid for through Medicaid and the Vaccines for Children program. Rick Jaffe believes that that Vaccines for Children will likely continue to pay for these shots, but those pediatricians won't be forced to give them as they have been up until now. So in that sense, it may be a win that children on Medicaid, which is 40 to 50% of all kids, they will not be being forced because it is a federal recommendation to get these shots. But we're still pursuing that litigation because obviously kids on Medicaid should not have less choice just because they're using the Vaccines for Children program than any other kids about which shots they get. I mean, their parents shouldn't have less choice.
Let's go to The Guardian, notoriously wonderful media outlet in the UK. Doctors fear devastating consequences for pregnant people after RFK Jr. order on COVID-19 boosters. Advocates for pregnant women said they are alarmed. So Dr. Amanda Williams said, this is her quote, "I cared for a healthy patient, 32 weeks pregnant, who died from COVID-19. Her last words were, 'I wish I'd taken the vaccine.'" I don't think so. I'm going to just say that from the stories that we did. And we did do stories of pregnant people or women, as whatever this article says, that were killed in hospitals and they were pregnant. So I don't believe that story. I'd like to see more evidence on that story. And I can't imagine if you're unvaccinated, the last thing you say is, "I wish I was vaccinated." I'm sure it's the last thing you say, "I wish I'd never come to hospitals," more like. But I don't believe that story. The Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine says the COVID-19 vaccine is safe to receive at any time during pregnancy. Mary, how do they get away with such blatant lies?
I don't think that's going to go on indefinitely, Polly. I think that's going to stop.
Well, Michael Nevadakis in The Defender, domestic violent extremists, Biden targeted COVID vaccine critics. This is according to documents declassified by Tulsi Gabbard, a director of national intelligence, following a Freedom of Information Act request. These views included the belief that COVID-19 vaccines are unsafe, especially for children. So they're talking about children's health defense being domestic violence extremists, by the way.
Holly, this is a must-read article. This is a fantastic article by Michael Neverdakis that shows us how close we came to a really, really dark place. Basically, the government was saying all of us who are speaking out, they said they have First Amendment rights on this, but if they connect to a threat actor, then they become domestic terrorist possibilities, and we should investigate them. And so there's really good quotes in here from people in our space, Jeffrey Tucker, Sayer G, saying, this was weaponization of political division. This was really all about finding the dissidents, and it was an attempt to erase dissent. I love this from Sayer G. It was a full spectrum information war, and they weaponized things for violent threats. What they did is they weaponized this, and they basically went after wellness educators, doctors, scientists, and parents. And then Ben Tapper, one of the chiropractors in the Disinformation Dozen, said, will there ever be justice? I think a first step is getting this information out there. So kudos to Tulsi Gabbard for making available this information of just how really terrible it was, that this was all about control. This was all about ferreting out these dissidents, getting them out of healthcare, getting them out of schools, getting them out of universities, and making everybody comply with mask mandates and vaccine mandates. They were specifically saying that opponents to COVID vaccine mandates and mask mandates, which we certainly are at CHD, we were potential domestic violent extremists. We've always known, Polly, that there's no clear definition of what is a terrorist, and yet every country is opposed to terrorism. So we've always known that this was a dangerous category that could be pretty easily misused. And here we see it against people who were against the government COVID narrative.
Marianne Damasi in The Defender, many things that were not right. Top FDA official refused the COVID shot while pregnant. This is Dr. Sarah Bremner, one of the most powerful figures at the FDA. She admitted she refused the COVID-19 mRNA shot while pregnant, even as the agency promoted it as safe and effective for all pregnant women. Knowing what I know, not only about nanotechnology, about medicine, about the medical countermeasures, also having a very strong and firm grounding in bioethics, there were too many things that were just not right. It's a good article.
So it's a very good article by Marianne Damasi, and there's a lot of upset that Sarah Brenner, who was actually the acting commissioner at one point of the FDA, but was then and is now the deputy commissioner, so very high position at FDA, that she didn't go along with this, that she thought that there were unknown risks, particularly from the nanoparticles. She was basically saying what Dr. Byron Bridle in Canada was saying, is that the Japanese Pfizer studies showed that there was biodistribution of the nanoparticles away from the injection site, that they went throughout the body very, very quickly. And in fact, they rested in the ovaries and in, very sensitive organs. So she was silent, but she exempted herself in one way or another. And people are angry at that. While I understand that anger, that she was silent and she didn't warn people, on the other hand, I am happy that she is at the FDA today because she is aligned that there were risks that should have been told. And she knows what happened, Polly. Secretary Kennedy is in this very difficult position that most people who were there through the Biden administration and through COVID are not aligned with his agenda. But I see Dr. Brenner as being aligned and knowing where the bodies are buried, if you will, and that she is working closely with Makari. She did come to the MAHA Institute conference last week or 2 weeks ago. So I see this as not a useful situation. And, she basically, if she had spoken out, we have to recognize that she would have been forced to leave the FDA. So I'm not justifying it, but it's we have to recognize what a difficult situation it was in and that there may be benefits for her being there now.
Michael Neverdakis again in The Defender. Did MAHA report go far enough on vaccines? Fans and critics weigh in. Vaccines were listed among the possible contributors to the chronic disease epidemic in the US, and vaccine experts and health freedom advocates praised the report for taking on the issue, but also pointed out ways in which they believe the MAHA Commission should go even further to address vaccine safety and the link between vaccines and autism. Well, we always want it to go further. We always want more.
We do. And the elephant in the room, Polly, in the MAHA report is it doesn't specifically acknowledge what happened during COVID, that these mRNA shots, that remdesivir, that the EUAs, that the mask mandates, that the closures, that all of these things contributed hugely to the epidemic of chronic disease and serious health risks to children. And that's very disappointing. I think it tells us something, though, too, Polly, of how traumatic, how sensitive, how difficult the issue of reckoning with COVID remains. But this is not over. This is just the assessment report at 100 days. There's no question that this is a huge advance. We've never seen anything like this before. The government, for the first time ever, is acknowledging that there is this epidemic of chronic disease and we have to do something about it, and that the situation is existential. And the real rubber meets the road in 80 to 100 more days, Polly, when they come out with their prescription. What needs to happen to overcome this? So don't lose hope. Don't lose heart. This is, this is just the beginning.
I think we should say something about this. There's a lot of people in our movement out there saying that Bobby's been bought out and all that kind of stuff. We know him, and we know, for example, I know that he knows what happened to my son. I know that he understands the HPV Gardasil is not a good shot. He knows way more, but there must be some kind of protocol wherever he is, that he can't just come out and say, you know what, no more vaccines, they're all really bad and dangerous, like I would want to do, or I would want to hear.
Well, remember what he said from the beginning, and I believe he's really following this today, is he said there are problems, they're poorly studied, we need real data, but I'm not going to take your vaccines away. That's what he said. The reality is, Polly, vaccines have become a religion. People talk about, I believe in vaccines, follow the science. I believe in the science of vaccines. That's not science. Science is based on observation and evidence. It's not based on belief. The vaccination program has become a kind of secular religion. And I think wisely, Bobby has said, I'm not going to take your religion away from you. If that's your religion, it's not for me to take that away. But I'm going to present the public with the evidence to show that this shouldn't probably be your religion. There are better religions out there. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, I just, with the children under 18, they have no say.
I don't think it's going to take that long. Polly, once the truth is out there, there's no parent in their right mind who's going to continue with this. But the evidence isn't out there yet for the vast majority of people. But we, as we'll cover in our next story with the recent polling data, we are growing as a movement by leaps and bounds every day.
Well, you're right. Let's look at this next article from Michael Neverdarkis in The Defender. It's a poll. 88% of Americans want pharma held financially responsible for vaccine injuries. Americans want better vaccine safety oversight, more stringent clinical trials, and greater big pharma accountability, according to this poll conducted by the Center for Excellence in Polling and commissioned by the Foundation for Government Accountability.
Yeah, this is extraordinary, Polly. So 88% of people are essentially saying pharma should not have a liability shield. That would mean getting rid of the 86 Act, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, and getting rid of the PrEP Act from 2005. That's incredible. This was a poll of over 1,000 people. There's a 3% margin of error, but it had about a third, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And it basically shows that the American people are 68% are aligned with the Make America Healthy Again movement. And then these three statistics kind of blow my mind, Polly. 95% of people in this poll said they want transparency. Anything that the government funds in the health arena, all the data should be available to the public. 93% said that any government sponsored, any science has to say who their financial ties are with in the pharmaceutical industry. 95% of people said there should be fresh fruits and vegetables in any government-sponsored school lunch. So these are really, that's like almost everybody, 95%, like that doesn't happen in American life. It really doesn't. So this is fantastic news that I do believe when evidence is put in front of the American people, when evidence of financial ties are put there, when transparent data of all these clinical trials from vaccines is available to the American public, yeah, they're going to make good decisions. You know, I had the honor of a lawyer right out of law school clerking for a federal judge. And it's the idea behind a jury system that there is wisdom in 12 people who discuss a set of facts. When they really look at the facts together, most of the time they're going to come to the right decision. So I have faith in people's common sense. I really do.
Okay, Suzanne Burdick in The Defender. So let's talk about the twins. Okay, so her first article, twin babies die a week after receiving 3 vaccines, and police interrogate the parents. This was May the 1st. Dallas and Tyson, fraternal 18-month-old twins, were found dead by their mother after receiving the Hep A, the flu, and DTaP vaccines on April the 23rd. The mother told the pediatrician that the family of the twins' father had a history of allergic reactions to the flu vaccine, but the pediatrician said it would be okay to give it to the babies anyway. If you go to Wednesday morning, Dr. Pierre Corey was on CHTV with Nurse Angela and Brian Hooker, did a fantastic job of breaking down the medical records.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to have these people.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic that Dr. Corey came, you know, this very experienced emergency room doc came and reviewed the records. And this deep dive in Defender, the second article, is just fantastic. And it really shows us that this is fairly typical, that when these babies die, then the police come in and they suspect the poor parents who are grieving from the loss of their children, they suspect them of murder. And so it's like a double trauma. It's a double tragedy. First, they lose their babies at the same time, and then they are investigated as if they're murderers. Literally, it's outrageous. But Dr. Corey here is saying there's just immense data supporting the vaccine causation. And he goes through something that we reported on not so long ago, Polly, that, you know, there are articles that make it very clear that these infant deaths are likely related. And that this really all started in the 1960s when the compulsory vaccine program ramped up. And in the early 1990s, the American Academy of Pediatrics, an affiliate of pharma, they came up with this absurd back to sleep program saying, oh, it's the way your baby's sleeping on their stomach that's causing their death, which is outrageously ridiculous. And there's really good data cited in this article that 75 to 90% of any infant deaths are within 7 days of vaccination. 25% are on day 1, 25% are on day 2. There's an article that's linked here that to me is really interesting about 13 pairs of twins that died on the same day, saying it is absolutely impossible that that's not vaccines. It had to be environmental. It could not be that 2 babies would die on the same day. And I think Angela Woolbrook, who's been so fantastic here from Vaccine Safety Research Foundation, she says, you know, we really need to educate the police on this issue. And I totally agree. I'm actually really thinking, Polly, we may need to figure out a major effort around SIDS deaths here, because it's outrageous what's happening to our babies. I mean, we've covered the twins, we've covered the child in Rochester, we've been covering these SIDS babies, and it's just, it's horrifying.
It's awful. It's just, and I'm so grateful to Angela, Nurse Angela has been police as well and educating them with articles. Let's go on to this in People magazine or People newspaper, whatever you want to call them. The headline here, okay, boy 8 contracts rare bacterial illness and dies 16 hours later. So it's tragic. The family of Liam Dahlberg is urging parents to make sure their children are protected against the aggressive illness. Liam came home from school with a headache. The next day was rushed to hospital. MRI scans showed the brain and spinal cord were covered with Haemophilus influenza bacteria, which is a sign of untreatable meningitis. The article then says, we are urging others to vaccinate their children against Hib. Now wait for this. As doctors say, Liam likely caught it from an unvaccinated child. Now Liam was completely vaccinated. So he was up to date on the Hib vaccine that is supposed to protect against most strains, if not all, of meningitis, but was led to believe that he likely got it from an unvaccinated child. So the propaganda in this poor, tragic story of this boy dying is disgusting.
Yeah,
they're using it to try and put fear into people.
Polly, we know that fear is absolutely the most potent weapon that pharma has in the medical complex that's doing this. That is their best weapon, and they have to keep the fear going. And in fairness, Polly, meningitis is a scary, fast-acting disease. Now, why this child got meningitis, the deeper question, I'd love to see his whole vaccination record, frankly. You know, who knows if he was vaccinated 2 weeks ago with 4 vaccines? We don't know that.
No, we don't know that. But the irony of the whole thing is he had the hip, which is supposed to protect you, and he then caught it. It doesn't make sense. Well, look, let's go on to your article, Mary, in The Defender. A new day in the nation's capital. Children's health defense agenda is now at the center of government policy. Children's Health Defense CEO Mary Holland was in Washington, D.C. to attend a U.S. Senate hearing on COVID-19 vaccines and myocarditis, and to witness the unveiling of the Make America Healthy Again 100-day report. We did talk about this last week, but the article's so good, Mary.
I'm so glad to be home this week, Polly. But I was in Washington last week for back-to-back Senator Johnson's official hearing of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, and then the next day for the 100-day report of the MAHA Commission at the White House. And, you know, it was very moving, Polly. We've been at this a long time, but to be in the Senate and then to be in the White House and have them talking about the lies, fraud, corruption of the federal health agencies and how we're going to turn this around and we're going to stick at it and we're not going to give up. And hearing that from a senator and from the secretary of HHS and the president was really a fantastic 2 days for me. Now, is everything we want in that hearing or in that report? Of course not. I saw Dr. Sherry Tenpenny at the hearing in the Senate, and we said to one another, this is the beginning of the beginning. This is not anywhere near where we want to go. But literally, I feel like, Polly, it's taken us decades to get to the starting gate. But we're now at the starting gate. And we've started the race. And I really feel for the first time a kind of confidence that it's going to be unstoppable, Polly. You can't, even if, you know, the cast of characters changes in the federal government, as it will. I don't think that now, with that polling data we just looked at, I don't think that this can be turned around. So, you know, there's a race against time to get as much done as possible, as quickly as possible. And I really believe that President Trump, Secretary Kennedy, Senator Johnson, I really believe they all understand that we're in a race against time. They have to get as much done as possible. But I really feel like those three people are really devoted to getting stuff done, making children healthy again. So it was very inspiring to me, Polly.
It was. And Senator Johnson was on Tucker Carlson recently and mentioned Vax 3, saying what a great movie it was.
He did. And he really ran for a third term in the Senate to raise the issue of vaccine injury. That is why he is in the Senate. And he is a very serious, effective senator. And I'm very grateful to him for what he's doing.
And remember, to our viewers as well, Vax 1, Vax 2, and Vax 3 are free on CHD TV. Just go to the movie section. And they're in different languages as well, so you can just send them to people that need to be educated. Highly recommend Vax 2 for those young pregnant mothers.
I totally agree. All three of the films are fantastic. They're free, and we need to get them out. And I do want to mention, Polly, while I was in Washington after Senator Johnson's hearing, there was a screening at the Visitor Center at the Capitol of Follow the Silenced, and that's on the website of React 19, also free. Also a really good film about what happened to the people who were injured by the COVID shots. So I think those 4 films together are really must watch if you really want to get a real understanding of what's going on. They're great. I love films for introducing people to these issues. It's immersive and there's value in that. And then you can talk about it and you can start to address their questions.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Suzanne Burdick here in The Defender. Nearly 100 children a day go to the emergency room for drug-related reactions. This is Australian report finding this. Acetaminophen, commonly sold under the name of Tylenol, and Calpol if you're in England, and antidepressants were responsible for most of the time that children were admitted to the hospital for medication poisoning. This is according to a medicine safety report released by Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. And that is interesting, Mary.
This is good news that this is coming out. So Dr. Parker is quoted here as saying, you know, acetaminophen or Tylenol is never safe for neurodevelopment, even at clinically accepted doses. Like Tylenol should never be given to children, according to Dr. Parker. And he's saying it absolutely is a cause of autism and likely of ADHD. The lawsuits around that did not succeed, but he says that there is decades of evidence about the ill effects of Tylenol on babies' brain development.
Well, let's talk about bird flu. Now, have you noticed that since Bobby has been in his position, we haven't really had too much to report on bird flu? It's gone a little bit quiet. Well, here's this. The US cancels contracts worth $766 million for Moderna's bird flu vaccine after a vigorous review. An HHS spokesperson confirmed the news. The vaccine was found not to be scientifically or ethically justifiable after clinical trials identified safety and efficacy concerns.
Polly, I think this is fantastic, right? So there's a new communications director for HHS, Andrew Nixon, and he said very directly, the reality is that the mRNA technology remains under-tested. That's a very bold statement in the world that we live in. And he says, basically, we're not going to make the same mistakes as the last administration. So as Nick Hulsher at the McCullough Foundation says, you know, there's a very positive development. Dr. Clayton Baker says this is absolutely the right decision. There's not been a new case of human bird flu in 3 months. So this is super exciting. You know, you and I were talking about bird flu every week.
I know. Well, I also hear that Bobby got involved with the ostriches. You know how we were trying to save the ostriches on CHD TV as well? He got involved, and my understanding is they're all still alive.
Yes, no, I think it's been reported, Polly, those ostriches are being flown to Dr. Oz's farm in Florida. So between Bobby and Dr. Oz, they've reached out to Canada and said, we will come in and save the ostriches, because apparently they have very interesting antibodies. They didn't get sick with COVID or bird flu, and they're an older kind of species than more recent birds. So very interesting.
The 400 ostrich are going to be flown.
Yes, I believe that's the case. Yes. Yeah, very exciting. Very exciting.
Excellent news. Okay, let's talk about chewing gum. Cancer-causing chewing gum. Experts tell the FDA to ban talc from food and drugs. Although many manufacturers voluntarily have removed the talc from health and beauty products following allegations that the mineral was linked to ovarian cancer, talc still remains in many foods and medications, including chewing gum. I mean, I don't chew gum, but I did not know that.
Polly, I didn't know any of this. So this is fascinating. All of the members of this advisory committee voted to get talc out of all foods and drugs. It's been known as a carcinogen for 40 years to be contributing to other problems. It's in 4 of the most common medications in the US, including Lipitor, Synthroid, Prilosec, and Neurontin. It's considered GRAS, generally recognized as safe. And the head of this panel, Dr. Tilmar, said, you know, it's not if we have to get rid of it, it's when and how we do it. But I had no idea that talc was in our food. Or in our drugs. I had no idea.
Apparently it's the white stuff. So on chewing gum, and I used to chew juicy fruit chewing gum when I was like a teenager. The whole time I loved it. And I used to lick all that talc off. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. My gosh, it's amazing we're all still alive.
It is amazing we're all still alive.
Well, that was a fun show, Mary, and thank you to all our viewers. And we do read your comments and when you write into us, and it's very encouraging, and thank you so much for that. We're going to go to our geoengineering report, but it's the 1st of June. So, Mary, in April we covered autism stories. May we did death following vaccines. So June we're going to be looking at our HPV Gardasil stories. We really want to highlight the danger of that shot. As Dr. Suzanne Humphrey says in Vax2, if anyone's got to go, that one has got to go. We are going to be playing Colton's story today. He's probably the most famous boy representing the dangers of HPV shot. And you know, Mary, it's disgusting that they even give these to boys. I mean, anyone but boys.
Yeah, no, it's such a tragic story. Colton was such a fine young man. It's such a tragedy that he's not with us.
Yeah, and many more you'll see during this month as well that got really badly hurt or died following.
Polly, should we mention the Simpson Wood, which is coming up this week?
Yes, well, it's on June the 6th. That's quite right, Mary. And there's going to be an article about it in the Defender as well. So sign up. We'll put a link into this as well. And I think a lot of you have already signed up, which is fantastic. It's going to be all day.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a text alert. So once you've signed up, we'll let you know that we're live with the Simpson Wood. Brilliant speakers. This is history. I really highly recommend it for your homeschooling, for your children. This is a really good history lesson.
You know, it happened, this meeting outside Atlanta and outside the CDC happened 25 years ago, but we're still living with the consequences of Simpson Wood. And so I highly recommend that people tune in. You, Polly, and others have worked so hard on it. I think it's going to be a really fantastic day.
It's going to be, and like I say, the chat will be open all day. So it'll be a big party, chat, talk, education, everything. So that's Friday, the 6th of June. Thank you for reminding me, Mary. All right, everybody, we're going to go to our geoengineering report now. Pray big, stand firm, never settle. Mary and I'll be back next week.
I'm Claire Julie, you're watching CHG TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. With warming oceans, failing crops, and mass die-offs, we're now in what scientists call abrupt climate collapse. But what if this collapse is being hastened by more than just global warming? In this episode of the Geoengineering Report, we look at the accelerating breakdown of ecosystems and why official responses have been so limited. Our expert Dane connects the dots between environmental failure and the institutional refusal to act.
I mean, but these things are everything you've been talking about. These things kill people. It's like murder.
Again, it's imperative to stop and consider those in power have made no secret of their intent to thin human populations, to drastically thin, down to their stated objective of 500 million from over 8 billion. That's a lot of death. And in the case of the US population, they're not just expendable to those in power, they're a rapidly increasing liability to those in power because much of the US population is armed, aren't they? So again, people need to understand that the planet's failing life support systems can't support the human population any longer. And I know that's a very difficult pill to swallow, and people suddenly think you're an Al Gore fan. I'm not an Al Gore fan. He's a part of the problem. He's a part of the power structure. The environmental groups, the same. They're not addressing climate engineering because they're protecting their 501c3 nonprofit, as if that matters on a planet that is going down in flames. But bottom line is, mathematically, statistically, with the failing life support systems, the bees are the tip of the iceberg, absolute tip of the iceberg. The ecosystems of the planet are failing across the board. This paradigm is not going to continue. Those in power know it, and they're doing everything they can to debilitate and thin the herd before the herd panics and reaches the pitchforks and torches moment, Polly. That's exactly what's going on.
Dane, as we approach summer, what are the sort of things that we are to expect if this continues?
This summer will be like none other. We're in what's known as an abrupt climate collapse scenario. And this is not some long, centuries drawn out equation as people have been taught and trained to believe. This is the fuse that burns slowly and steadily, but when it reaches the stick of dynamite, the exothermic reaction happens and all hell breaks loose. So in regard to the thermal energy buildup on planet Earth, 10 years ago, it was equivalent to the energy contained, the heat contained in 4 Hiroshima-sized nuclear bombs per second. That's scary enough, isn't it? That's how fast the heat's building up on the planet. And anybody can research anything I'm stating. It's all there if anybody takes the time. So 10 years ago, 4 Hiroshima bombs per second. Now we're at 13 per second. Right now, based on the most recent thermal energy buildup data, the planet is warming at the thermal energy equivalent of 13 Hiroshima bombs per second. It's gone into the oceans. Oceans are superheating. We had temperatures, Polly, did you know this? We had temperatures in oceans off Florida a year ago of 102 degrees. It's killing coral, killing kelp. It's killing everything. Fisheries, fish floating up dead everywhere. Same thing's happening in freshwater. In fact, just a massive die-off in the Great Lakes right now. We're only in spring. So again, and that heat causes the oceans and freshwater to stratify, deoxygenate, everything dies, we're there. We're going to have empty food shelves here soon. We have about 36 countries around the world right now with literally not enough to eat. Mad Max scenarios ensuing, just like Haiti. So the bottom line is people are pretending that somehow it's all going to magically work out. That's not going to happen. And I would argue there's solace in facing this storm head on, knowing you are part of the cure and not the disease. And that's what everyone needs to implement if we're to have any chance of altering this equation. Know that we're here for a reason, for a purpose. It's not an accident of fate. We have a part in this play. And it's up to all of us to play that part as best we can given our individual circumstances.
We love hearing from our viewers at CHGTV, so please reach out to us with any questions, any comments, or if there's anybody in this field that you would like to hear more from, please let us know, plug some experts and we'll try to get them on. Please reach out to us at goodmorning@CHGTV. Thanks so much for watching the Geoengineering Report. We'll see you next time on CHGTV.
We're just about ready to go into the clean room facility. We will be looking at the samples by scanning electron microscopy. Scanning electron microscopy will provide information about the particle size distribution. We will be able to get some elemental analysis. What really this technique is for is to prioritize our samples for downstream, more advanced imaging, more high-resolution imaging, especially by transmission electron microscopy. Put on a fresh pair of gloves. We're going to start with sample number 8. This is a blank that was collected on the return flight. No flow through this filter, so this filter should be free of any particulates. I'm going to use these scissors and forceps that have been cleansed with isopropanol and then acetone and wipe free with these dust-free cloths. These are the series of samples that we're interested in. These are samples number 9, 10, and 11. These were taken on the return flight where the plane passed through an induced cloud layer. Number 10, I believe, is the one that was passed through a cloud layer at around somewhere between 17 and 19,000 feet. I will take time to cleanse the instruments between each sampling. Preparing sample number 9, near the center. Opening it to ensure that the surface that had received the particulates is facing upward. Number 9 is completed. Now processing sample number 10. Additional sample. This blank sample was taken after the plane landed, and 3 of the samples containing actual airflow particulates had been collected. So we have one prior to the mission and one at the conclusion of the mission. Prior to imaging, these samples are coated with a thin layer of platinum. The platinum helps to take the excess charge or electrons and drain them off to the stub. And now we'll do the samples where we pass through the cloud layer.
A few little bright particles. This particle here is probably the one that we'll do the most analysis on.
So the general image that we're seeing now are the glass fibers from the glass fiber filter itself, and the bright particles or bright areas that we see are areas operating in the so-called backscatter mode of this microscope, collects electrons that are backscattered, especially from metal center compounds. But you can clearly see the lighter and darker contrasted areas there, suggesting that it's an aggregate. Mm-hmm.
Some of the smaller particles in here we're looking at on the order of about 450 nanometers long. but there's also smaller particles in there too. So backscattered electrons, typically the higher the atomic number, the brighter the signal. That being said, what we will do is look for the bright spots and then analyze those. The glass itself does seem to have sodium in it. Looks like aluminum, sodium, silicon, calcium, potassium. So the reason that caught my eye is because it's darker than everything else. And it's got lots of small particles in it.
Yep. And this gives us a lot of information. Again, it identifies which filters have qualitatively more materials, just, basically we see more material on it. It also gives us information about size of particles and potential for aggregates that we might be dealing with in the samples.
Barium sulfide again?
So barium sulfide is interesting. What he's doing now is just getting a high resolution image of it to see if this is indeed a single particle or if there's any evidence that there's an aggregate of smaller particles.
So really the big standout in this one seems to be iron. In this field we have one there, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And I did analysis on all of them. They all seem to be pretty similar in composition.
Yeah.
Well, this is definitely made up of much smaller particles.
Yeah.
So this may be a clump of what you're looking for. We just analyzed 3 different areas. This particle seems to be high in aluminum. It's a large flake, though. And this has some silver, too.
Yeah, in terms of now the aluminum signatures that we're getting from the glass fibers themselves, this
is much bigger.
Much, much bigger.
So look at that.
Yeah, that's the aluminum piece.
It's easily 3x the silicon.
Yep.
And I think the silicon and aluminum are pretty similar in the glass. So here, if you look at just the glass fiber, silicon is significantly taller than aluminum. So that particle there is mostly aluminum.
Yeah.
So measuring this one right here, this is below 70 nanometers.
Right. Good. In the precipitation samples that we've seen in the past, the aluminum oxide particles that we've been seeing are on the order of 40 to 60 nanometers. So that's consistent with the size that we've seen from precipitation events. Again, these samples were collected directly from the air. There's not a lot of approaches or instrumentation that you can use to observe these nanomaterials. I mean, again, these are the sizes of viruses. And so really the only equipment or instrumentation that is appropriate for identifying these materials is high-resolution transmission electron microscopy. This allows us not only to determine the size of the particles, we can also determine the composition using a technique called elemental dispersive spectroscopy. It's done within this large microscope. So it will give us information about the morphology of the particles, the composition of the particles, and we can actually see the crystalline spacing, so the spaces of the crystals themselves. So we are talking high-resolution microscopic techniques that are really the only way to be able to observe these directly. Morphology is important because the productions of these materials are really of a constrained size range, and we've seen this already in samples that we've analyzed from other sources. American Element produces lots of these nanomaterials, and you can actually purchase them online. The size distribution of these engineered particles are quite homogeneous.
What we get? Ooh, it's like there's aluminum. Now, what I've done is tell it to calibrate to the aluminum peak. So now what it's doing is going through each of its process times and each of its gain values and calibrating. Oh man. I can tell you this much. what I'm seeing right now is far superior to the last time I ran that operation. So you see you got two calciums, right?
Yeah.
All right. K alpha, K beta. All right. This variant peak is probably an L and an M. Here's your major variant.
Yeah, and then you have the other to confirm that.
Correct. Variant is a triple quadruple.
It's definitely
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The significance of the results is that, to my knowledge, this is the first evidence of nanomaterials collected directly from the emissions of aircrafts. This is the first time that this has been reported or acknowledged.
What's your name?
Caitlin.
Okay, how old are you, Caitlin?
I'm 9.
9. This is Mummy.
Hello, Kathleen.
This is Colton. Yourself.
Hi.
Gavin.
What's your name?
Gavin.
How old are you, Gavin?
I'm 13.
And you are Colton's
I'm
nurse?
Emily. I'm his nurse. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do this, everyone, because this is a very, very important story. They're all important stories, but this is a story I've been wanting you to hear for some time. So tell us what happened here.
Well, Colton was a 13-year-old healthy, strong boy. He loved to do any sports.
You've got some pictures, haven't you?
Yes, he loved baseball, motorcycle, anything that has to do with an adrenaline rush. Indoor skydiving, a little bit of behind the four-wheeler, snow skiing. He was a handsome kid. Motocross.
He still is a handsome kid.
Yeah. Motocross was his passion. That was our family sport. We love motocross. He's 13 in this picture here.
So this happened when he was 13. So there he is on his 13th birthday.
His 13th birthday was almost a year before we had the HPV vaccine. Riding.
Wow.
Good motocrosser.
Seriously good.
So yeah, he was really awesome. So
What a shot.
he was going to go to scout camp. For scout camp, you have to have a physical. So we went to the doctor's office, and the doctor says, "Hey, he's the age that you should get the HPV vaccine." I said, "Okay, how come?" Well, it can help prevent cancer, and even if he's not promiscuous, he can still give it to his wife when he gets married. I said, "Oh, that sounds like a pretty good thing then." So he was administered the vaccine, and on the third round, 2 weeks after, he started having a really bad neck ache. I said, "Take some ibuprofen, go to school." The next day, he went motorcycle riding with his dad. It was the last. Well, here's one more picture. One of his best shots of him on the motorcycle. Strong kid. He loved showing off his muscles.
Well,
Like any strong boy, working out and having fun.
Active.
Very active.
Yeah.
Very active. Here's that was right before school started, his 8th grade year. For Christmas, he got a big boy bike, so he was upgrading to the adult size bike. He was better than his dad. On his little bike, he could outrun him. And then this is the last day he got to ride that big boy bike. And that day he came home, he was pale, starting to feel nauseous, really sore neck. It didn't feel good. He went to bed, and the next day I checked on him. He still didn't want to get out of bed. I just thought, "Man, you're just really weak and exhausted." And that evening, when he sat up to take a drink of water, he said, "Mom, can you give that to me in my left hand? I can't use my right arm very good. It's weak." And he tried to lift up, and all of a sudden he just flopped back, and his his head just hit the pillow, and I went, Colton, are you going paralyzed? Like, in my head, I don't know if I said it out loud because I didn't want to scare him, but I just thought, do you have spinal meningitis? You know, it was my first, like, really bad fear. But it was so late that evening that we didn't go to Instacare right away. We waited till the next morning, and I could have lost him that night. So my husband took him in to Instacare Monday morning, February 17th, 2014, holding his head for him because he couldn't get out of bed and he couldn't use his right arm. They immediately took him down to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake, which is about an hour away by ambulance from our home. And they did, started doing testing, spinal tap, MRI. The MRI showed inflammation in his spinal cord in his neck from C1 to T12. Original diagnosis was transverse myelitis, acute longitudinal transverse myelitis. When the doctor came out and asked me questions, they said, well, has he been sick? Has he had any changes or anything? I said, no, he hasn't been sick. I said, he's had a sore neck for the last couple days. Well, what about a couple weeks ago? Or, they kind of were backtracking, and I says, well, he had the HPV vaccine on February 1st, and they went, oh, well, we'll be reporting that to VARS, and they did, and then they just kind of kept going on, and they kind of.
So how long after that vaccine are you in this hospital now? What's the
February 17th was the first day he entered Primary Children's, which he stayed 88 days.
88 days.
Yeah. He was pretty much completely paralyzed. I don't know if you want to see this picture, but this is the inflammation in his spinal cord. This is supposed to be dark all through here. That's his neck region. This is his spinal cord. This white line all the way down the middle is the inflammation in his spinal cord that is causing his paralysis. So on day one, his full neck and his whole right arm was completely paralyzed, and the left arm was starting to go paralyzed. They were really nice. They said, hey, he's gonna start not being able to breathe pretty soon. It might be better if we intubate him. So this was immediately after they intubated him that first night, because the paralysis just went down, down, down after the first 4 to 5 days, where he was completely paralyzed from the neck down, had no movement at all. Little did we know we were going to lose all form of communication with him because he couldn't talk. Once you're intubated, you can't speak. So we were using the thumbs up, the thumbs down to say, are you okay, yes and no questions. But by the end of that week, he couldn't even move his thumb. So then we're like, now you have to use your eyebrows to say yes or no to us. The next thing they also decided to do was plasmapheresis, which is they put a port in their jugular and they take your blood out and they put new albumin in it. It's basically dialysis of your plasma. And it's just sad to see your kid so
he's 13 years old.
13 years old. Yeah. He didn't look very good. And they'd come in to do therapy, daily, trying to get him mobile, because when you're completely paralyzed, you can get pneumonia easy. When you're ventilated, there's a lot of problems that can arise with infections and whatnot. So we couldn't keep him very comfortable while he was in the hospital. So he was always being positioned with frog legs and going back and forth with, movements. We'd try to massage his legs. We'd lotion him and try to keep him comfortable. His temperature would rise and fall. You know, I mean, he'd go from hot to cold easy. So therefore, he had lots of different. He had gel pillows to hold him in the bed, but he also had ice packs or hot packs, and he'd go back and forth because of his temperature being not regulated very well.
He's smiling in this photograph. Colton.
So,
Boy smiling.
the one thing about Colton is he does always smile, and you know, he's an awesome kid that way. He doesn't complain. You're good, huh?
Yeah, I guess.
So this noise that everybody's hearing right now, this breathing apparatus, do you want to talk about that?
Well, kind of does get a little annoying in a quiet room.
No one's annoyed, everybody's just desperately sad for you. They're
Yeah, it
so
does
sorry.
suck, 'cause,
So tell us from your point of view.
well, it does suck, like, not being able to play sports anymore. Because I did do a lot of sports, and it was my favorite. But,
You were awesome sportsman, we've just seen
Yeah.
photos of you.
yeah, now I have to sit on the sideline, just watch everybody. But getting used to it, so it's not as bad anymore. But I do a lot of fun things now, like my razor. I've gone skiing, camping a lot, so it's always been fun. Show some pictures.
Here's a picture of him in his razor.
So this is recent.
Last March.
Yeah, a year
But you
ago.
have to have this breathing apparatus with you the whole time.
Yeah, it's about 15 pounds, so I always have to have someone with me to carry it, to get around.
It's a literal ball and chain for him, because his right arm is completely paralyzed. His left arm only has minimal function now, and he's lucky he's regained his legs and his core strength. He was a complete quad for a whole month and a half. We've done some very rigorous therapy in order for him to be where he is today. We would travel 100 miles round trip a day after he'd go to school to do a couple hours of therapy for a year and a half, 3 to 4 days a week, so that he could get his legs back.
So the people who gave you this vaccine, where are they now? What do they say?
Our doctor is actually, he's the doctor that delivered him. He's just a family practice doctor. I still like him. I am upset that he still wants to give the vaccine, but you know, he will not give it to boys anymore. He's cautioning on girls to give it to girls, but it's hard when you.
So he's not going to give the HPV vaccine to boys?
Correct.
Colton, do you just realise how many boys
Yeah,
that you just
it's
saved?
good he's at least not doing it to boys, but lots of girls can still get hurt.
I think the thing that I was so naive to whatever the medical doctor says, man, if the doctor's going to say something, he's the one that went to school. He knows the best. So of course you're going to do what they recommend. And so that's what I did, you know. I mean, he's been his doctor his whole life. He's been my doctor since I was a teenager. And I still trust him in a lot of other things. Now when it comes to the vaccinations, I don't trust anybody. They continue to, his other doctors continue to ask, does he need a flu vaccine? I'm like, absolutely not. Well, why not? I says, obviously.
I mean, surely they're not pushing any more vaccines on him.
Oh, they still try to push. I have to tell him every time I go in, document that I don't want to be asked, because I might shred your head.
So, Colton, what's happened to you is criminal, basically. It's criminal.
Yeah, it is.
What's a day like for you? What's your, could you go to school?
Yeah, I go to school.
Get that fly off him. It's an annoying fly. It was over with us
Yeah.
for ages.
Yeah, Yeah, I do go to school full time now, but I have to have a lot of assistance to get around a little bit.
A lot of it.
Are your friends at school supportive of what's happened?
Yeah,
Very.
yeah. Some of my best friends have still been with me by my side the whole time, and I do appreciate it.
Is there anything that we can do for Colton? I mean, we want to help. We want to do anything that we can. Is this going to get better? Do we? No.
He's at his new normal, as far as we can tell. We've tried to do a diaphragm pacer, where they insert a diaphragm and electrically stimulate the diaphragm. However, his diaphragm has atrophied too much. It wouldn't accept stimulation, so he's pretty much gets to be on this the whole time.
People are asking if you're in pain still now.
Not really anymore, no.
No brain, no pain. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was in a little bit of pain though in the hospital, and for a little while after that, but it's starting to get a little better now.
So when you couldn't speak, do you remember what that felt like?
It was hard to communicate with people. Couldn't tell them how you felt exactly. It's just yes or no questions.
He used his eyebrows really good though. He scrunched them
Yeah.
and raised them. And
What does your headband say? Caught you staring.
Yeah. It's funny, people's reactions. And they know they've been staring. It's funny.
we keep a sense of humor with our lifestyle, I guess. That's how we get through day to day, and we understand people are curious, and it's natural. I mean, someone's different or looks different, you kind of look, but so this is kind of just a joke. Hit the joke's back on you, we caught you staring at us.
What about anger?
I haven't really burst out that much. I kind of just keep it to myself. I don't really like to complain. So,
There's a lot of people on here that are very angry about what's happened to you.
yeah.
Very angry.
Yeah, I'm angry that they're still giving out the vaccine. They don't care that people are getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joke.
What's your message, both of you, all of you, what's your message to parents?
Well, you gotta do your research. Like, you can't just trust a doctor anymore. You have to do your own ways to find out what's best for you.
And it must have been hard on your dad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I bet he's angry.
Yeah, very angry. It's affected him greatly. He's his riding buddy. He's his hunting buddy. He works out in the garage with him. He mowed our lawn. Gavin gets to pick up any chores now that Colton used to do, and
It's hard
it's
on
all
your
on
siblings
him.
as well. We know
Yeah.
that. We speak to the siblings a lot, and it's a very painful thing to watch your parents sad and what's happened to your brother. It's not okay. So you're allowed to be angry too.
Yeah. Well, both of my kids, they've had to grow up a lot the last 2 years without mom around. I've had to be with him. Not that I don't mind being with him, it's just that then I'm not with my other two. So it's a hard balancing act, especially when we were in the hospital and I had to balance being with him and having my other two kids still going to school, and at night, he's still kind of like having a baby. You have to wake up to the monitors and the alarms that go off, or if he needs to go to the bathroom, he can't just run out of the bed by himself. He has to a ventilator has to go with him. He has to have his cervical collar on in order to go to and from the bathroom. It's gotten a lot better now. But before, when he first got out of the hospital, he wouldn't do it by himself. Now he will do it a little bit by himself. I can show you a picture of him.
I cannot tell you how many people are coming forward to us
I mean, our story, Vax, is about the MMR. And since we put Vax out, Gardasil is possibly, would you say? But Gardasil and DTaP.
For the worst.
This is a little embarrassing for him to show this, but just so you can see what he looks like when he is balancing his head and trying to make it not fall forward, because he is quite paralyzed in his neck. You can see the distortion in his shoulders, and this is him trying to roll out of bed by himself and then disconnect so he can move around for a minute free of the ball and chain.
And you're smiling again, Coles, huh?
Yeah.
This was actually taken at 3 in the morning, and he's always smiling. He's just a good
You
kid.
know, you're a real example to all of us. You really are truly an example.
Life gives
I'm
us
so
all
proud
challenges.
of you. We're all so proud of you. Really, really, truly proud of you. All of you. We know all your pain. We love you guys.
He loves to stay active. We just bought him a recumbent bike that we've modified all to the left hand so he can maintain some function on his own. And he cruises in this thing. It's pretty awesome.
That is amazing.
So, no matter what your ailment in life, you know, our saying is to just keep on keeping on.